Hey guys, it's time we did a deep dive on Feats of Strength. I do believe it's one of the most overrated changes that's been made to the game. In other words, I think that it's not very good. And I think that the community's perception of it is entirely wrong when you look at the facts. And so we're going to be deep diving into what the boots actually give you and some statistics that are provided by Froxon, comparing game length and win rate for First Blood and First Turret Gold and things like that, to where we're at today on this patch. And I think by the end of this, you'll have a much better informed opinion on what Feats of Strength is providing to your team and how worth it is to play around it. Unfortunately, I think when there's these new season changes, people tend to believe that in order to be a good player, you have to be adaptable. And so you need to make changes to the way that you're playing the game or your champion pool or your runes or your summoner spells in order to accomplish the new objectives and goals and things that Riot has put into the game. Unfortunately, you have to objectively deep dive and look at what are these things actually giving me and are they really worth being played around. But perception is reality sometimes, and if people think that the changes to the game mean that you need to play more for early game or more for First Blood, they're actually going to lead to more aggression and more people playing that way. So obviously, I think there are some fundamental problems when you think about comparing what you gain from Feats of Strength to what you were gaining before. We have to keep in mind that First Blood Gold on the old patch gave you 100 gold, and First Turret Gold gave you 300 gold. What that meant is that very early on into the game, your team was infusing one player with a 100 gold spike, and another player, potentially even the same player, with another 300 gold spike, which is very valuable for a couple of reasons compared to Feats of Strength. Number one, the gold could be funneled into one or two people. And so you could have somebody get 100 gold again, or 400 gold, or 300 gold, depending on what combination of First Blood and First Turret they get. And because of that, instead of splitting the gold among everyone on the team equally in the way that getting these boot upgrades does, you're giving the bonus directly to one or two players, which is actually much better for the ability for somebody to carry the game and for the game to be more snowbally in that way. The other thing that's important is that gold is much more valuable early into the game because you have more time to utilize the stats that it's giving you to do more damage or to take more damage, depending on what stats you're getting, like health or AD. And the percentage increase in your damage output or in your tankiness is going to be higher when you get something that's worth a certain amount of gold early. For example, if you had 1,000 HP and you get 100 HP, that's a 10% increase to your HP. But if you get the same 100 HP when you have 2,000 HP, it's only a 5% increase to your HP. So suddenly the value isn't as good when you're buying 100 HP, 20 minutes into the game versus 10 minutes into the game. Very important concept. Same thing with AD, obviously. If you have 100 AD and you gain 10, boom, that's a 10% increase. But you have 200 AD later into the game, buying that same longsword to give you 10 AD is only going to represent a 5% increase in your AD or your damage output. And so because of that, getting First Blood Gold, which you used to get very early on into the game, maybe 1 to 4 minutes into the game, maybe longer depending on the match, but on average probably a couple of minutes into the game. And First Turret Gold, which probably came on average between maybe 9 and 14 or 15 minutes into the game, as opposed to when do you get the bonus from Feats of Strength? You don't get the bonus from Feats of Strength until you've completed 2 legendary items, bought your full tier 2 boots, and then spent an additional 750 gold to upgrade your boots. So because of the fact that gold is more valuable early into the game and you're not getting to buy your tier 3 boot upgrade from Feats of Strength until much later into the game, maybe 20 to 25 minutes into the game, maybe even longer in some cases, depending on how expensive your items are and what role you're playing. Support actually can potentially get it the earliest because their support item counts as a legendary. Because of that, Feats of Strength is actually coming on much later and giving you that bonus much later than those other things. To put it into perspective, as we talked about, like the 1,000 HP versus 2,000 HP or 100 AD versus 200 HP, meaning double the stat increase, that's kind of how I think about the gold value. And if you ask my opinion on how how valuable is gold at different points of the game. I would rather have 100 gold at 1 minute into the game than 200 gold at 10 minutes into the game. And I'd rather have 100 gold at 1 minute into the game than 300 gold at 20 or 25 minutes into the game. So that is how impactful the gold value is at different times in the game. And so that is a really big deal, because obviously the old gold values, you're probably getting that 100 to 300 gold, or 100 to 400 gold if you get both the First Blood and First Turret gold. You were probably getting, that gold again at like a couple of minutes into the game for First Blood and 9 to 14 minutes or something for the First Turret. And so you're getting those things much, much, much more quickly. So the time value of gold is really important there. If you believe my estimation of how important the time value of gold is, then Feats of Strength is really, really bad. But obviously we'll kind of just look at the straight facts of what were you getting from the First Blood gold and the First Turret gold before compared to what you're getting from Feats of Strength. So this is what's important to keep in mind. If you were getting a 400 gold bonus before anyways, and now that's removed, the boots that you get from Feats of Strength, since you're paying 750 gold for them, need to provide you with not just 750 gold worth of value, but they also need to provide each player on your team with, I guess, 400 divided by 5 players worth of value. Now, because there's that time value of gold component, and I want to keep the math simple, let's say that it needs to provide you with 500 gold worth of value. If it needs to provide you with 500 gold worth of value, each player needs to get 100 gold worth of extra value out of the boots that they're buying in order for it to be basically an equal reward to First Blood and First Turret gold before. I don't believe that the boots achieve that, and when we run through the numbers on these boots, I think we'll see that. However, first, I want to take a look at Riot Froxon's tweet, because he provided some much needed statistics that I wanted to get actually before I made this video, and wasn't able to find on stat websites. But now we have the numbers and we can kind of look at the actual impact. And keep in mind, this is with people playing for it heavier than they would have if they thought it was neutral or not a big deal. So people are picking more early game champions, junglers, not all of them, but some junglers who are overrating it. Many of them are changing their clear in order to try to gank early to get First Blood, especially with the teleport changes. Laners are taking Ignite and trying to snowball more anyways. And so what we see is, when we take a look at this tweet, that after 2 full days of data, Riot wanted to give us an update on what they're seeing in ranked. And so we're comparing the previous patch to this current patch, so just 1 patch ago. The win rate for First Blood went from 57.6% to 57.5%. So it's actually a 0.1% decrease in the win rate for getting First Blood. The game time at different percentiles of play, with the 10th percentile being the highest and the 90th percentile being the lowest, because game length is shorter the higher up you go, because people are better at closing out games. In the 10th percentile, games have gone from 20.7 minutes long to 20.5 minutes long, so a little bit faster, but almost no change. And at the 50th percentile, so your average player is now experiencing, instead of a 30.2 minute average game, a 29.6 minute average game. And then for much lower elo, it went from 39.6 minutes to 38.9 minutes. So the biggest change, I think, was a 0.7 minute, we're talking about less than a minute of decrease in game time. And that's, again, with people trying to play a play style that is more snowbally, and including the fact that not only was Feats of Strength added, but Otacon was added as well. And Otacon is quite strong and is available to teams in a way that was, I think, does make games end faster, because if you get Otacon and then you get Baron or something like that, that can be quite a large influx in power compared to just getting Baron before. And so I think adding an extra objective into the game that's going to give people bonuses in Otacon is going to speed up the game as well, on top of the fact that people changing their play style and champions and stuff like that to be more early game centric, because they have the perception that playing for early game and Feats of Strength is important, is also going to speed up the game. Yet despite these things, the game's barely sped up at all, and the first blood win rate is actually decreased or about the same. Same thing with first turret win rate. It went from 70.4% on the previous patch to 70.8% on the current patch. So a tiny increase of 0.4%, but about the same. The win rate with feats of strength is 74.1%. But of course, the important thing to keep in mind is that when you get feats of strength, you're already very likely to win because you've already taken first blood and first turret, or taken, a combination of first blood and 3 objectives. Basically, if you're in a position to get feats of strength, it's not that feats of strength is causing you to win. It's the fact that you've already gotten 2 or 3 or 4 objectives or something like that in the game. That means that you're already ahead because of not only what those objectives provide you as a bonus, but because if you're getting those things and winning those objectives, you're more likely to be the better team in terms of players as well. And so if you're, not that everyone who gets first blood is always better, that's a very volatile one. First turret is a little bit more consistent, but a little bit more difficult as well. But especially getting 3 objectives, the team that's getting these things is probably just better than the other team in the first place. So not only the bonuses that you're getting from all the grubs and dragons and things like that, the first blood or the first turret, but also on top of that, the fact that you're probably just the better team anyways. So of course, feats of strength is going to have a strong win rate. The question isn't really what feats of strength's win rate is. The question is, what is the win rate that is solely due to the boot upgrades, solely due to what feats of strength is giving you as a bonus? And that's kind of the confusing part of the system, is I think when you design a system that already rewards you for being ahead, people's perception is that it's really strong because its win rate is very high because the winning team is already getting it. Dragon's actually the same way. People often cite, well, like almost every Dragon Soul has a 90% win rate. But you don't actually, and maybe people make this mistake too, you don't actually want to play for Dragon Soul as if it gives you a 90% chance to win the game once you finish that last dragon, because that's not how it works. Dragon Soul gives you the bonus that it gives you, but the fact that you're already winning versus the other team in so many team fights and killing them so much and just outmaneuvering them and positioning them on the map that you were able to take 4 dragons before them almost always means that you're just the better team or that you're really far ahead, right? Oftentimes you're going to take dragon or you're going to take baron after you've just wiped the entire team in a team fight. And so how much of dragon or baron's win rate has to do with the buff that dragon or baron is giving you versus the fact that you're already beating the enemy team in team fights in order to secure dragon or baron in the first place. So that's what you have to understand. Securing Dragon Soul doesn't actually shoot your chances of winning up from 50% to 90%. What happens is that a team who is already 80% or 85% likely to win the game gets Dragon Soul, and now their chances go up from 80% or 85% to 90%, and maybe Dragon Soul represents a 5 or a 10% increase in their chance of winning because of the actual buff that it gives. Same thing here with Feats of Strength. Maybe Feats of Strength, right, just means that the team that was getting first turret gold and first blood gold was already 70% likely to win the game. If you combine these two, because these are both positive factors, even though this is lower, I know this math is going to be a little bit confusing, but if you're 57% likely to win the game with first blood and you're 70% likely to win the game with first turret, if you get both of them because they're both positive metrics, you're even more likely than 70% to win the game, right? So if you're already sitting at 71% likely to win the game just because you got first turret on the previous patch and on this patch, how much is Feats of Strength actually contributing to that? You're probably already going up from 71% to 74% just from getting first turret and first blood, regardless of Feats of Strength. Yet Feats of Strength only has that 74% win rate. So perhaps Feats of Strength is actually neutral on your win rate, or even potentially lowering it because the gold value of the boots is not worth putting the gold into, which is actually what my opinion is, and we'll see when we do the deep dive on the stats that you get from the boots. Each of the other major objectives like Inner Turret, Dragon, Rift Herald, etc. are also the same as the previous patch. Obviously, win rates are also related to how far ahead the team is just by playing and getting ahead normally through kills and farming, so win rates need to be interpreted with that in mind. If all of the epic objectives were removed from the game and players could only kill each other and take turrets, you'd probably expect something like a 70% win rate at 20 minutes. Current thoughts. Based on what we're seeing, we don't think snowballing in the new season is much higher than in the previous season. If at all, snowball on the first season patch is typically higher since new content needs to be learned, but goes down over time. So this is another interesting point, that people are less comfortable with the changes in the game and how to play around them. And so people are actually experiencing more snowbally games, partially because people don't know what's going on with the changes. I would say that this season, the changes were actually pretty simple and straightforward, believe it or not. So in my opinion, I don't think that they are that bad, but who knows? The other thing that's important to note about this, though, as well, is the other thing that I think is leading people to believe that there's higher snowballing in the game is another point I talked about that's completely unrelated to feats of strength, which is that at the start of the rank season, the pool of players that you match with is much wider. Because when you have a reset, when you have your soft reset, the higher up you are, the harder your reset is, the further back you go. And so what you end up with is kind of a, if here's the rank distribution from here to here, and you squish the top end down a little bit with the soft reset, and there's nowhere for the bottom end to go because they can't go any lower with the reset because they're already at the very bottom. What ends up happening is that you're compressing the ranked ladder and causing more people from a wider range of ranks to play with each other in the start of the season. That's why at the start of the season, rather than playing with a bunch of people who are Masters 300 LP or something the previous season, I'm playing with a mix of people who are Challenger, people who are Diamond, and somewhere in that range. You'll probably experience the same thing, just to a lesser extent, in lower ranks as well. So in Platinum, for example, you might find yourself playing with more Silver players and more Emerald or even Diamond players at the start of the season than you normally experience. And then as people, sift out and play a lot of games, and people, go back to the rank where they can win 50% of their games, you start to experience those more consistent games. This is another thing I warned about in the early season pitfall video, which is that you have to be careful with understanding that there's higher variance in your games, because you're going to have some Diamond player feeding, and you're going to have some Challenger player going 15-0 and carrying the game because they're in like a lower average MMR game than they usually would be in. And so you need to be prepared to play a bit like a Smurf. You need to be aware that some of your teammates are going to be wildly unreliable, and some of them are going to be extremely good. You need to figure out who those people are and play around them accordingly. And you need to be extra cautious when playing around your teammates at the start of the season, as if you were playing on a lower ranked Smurf account. Because of that, I think the perception of games being more one-sided or snowballing exists in the solo queue games because of the fact that that soft ranked reset causes a bunch of people from different ranks to come together. Okay, what else does he say here? We took a lot of preventative measures to reduce snowballing in the new season, like early home guards, right? So increased XP range, removing gold from first blood and first turret, etc. However, the perception is that snowballing is higher, and the visibility of the feats reward makes it feel like the game is more snowbally, which can cause mental to collapse. It's hard to argue with how players feel. This is the most important thing as well, is that if people feel like the new season is more snowbally, they'll change their playstyle, they'll change their champion pool, they'll pick more early game champions, and they'll play even more into that narrative and actually cause games to, in actuality, be more snowbally and end earlier, because now we're playing Jarvan or something like that when no one was playing Jarvan before. And so, if we're playing more early game champions to try to play for first blood, and we're taking Ignite more often and all of these things, we're playing into that narrative and actually making the game more snowbally. Again, this is another thing he mentioned, the mental aspect of seeing that you've lost. How many people have just given up on games in the early season because they think that First Blood is OP and contributing to Feats of Strength, even though it's only one of the three things, and Feats of Strength isn't even that good. The perception that, hey, we lost First Blood, so we lost the game, exists for a lot of players who read the notes but are actually pretty bad at interpreting the results. And so what do you get? You end up with people who give up and mentally collapse in their games, and that'll also lead to a more snowbally game, because if somebody gives up after you lose Feats of Strength, or somebody gives up after losing First Turret Gold or First Turret or First Blood, then you're going to feel more snowbally games because people are just giving up because they think they've lost the game, because their perception is that if they lose First Blood, their chances of winning compared to last season are like, they're acting like their chances of winning are like 0%, when it's like, no, we just saw your chances of winning are like 43% or something like that. And it's exactly the same as it was after you lost First Blood last season. But you're reading the patch notes without understanding what the benefit is from getting Feats of Strength, and so you just overreact to it. We think that most of the tier 3 Feats boots are either on the borderline / not worth the 750 gold cost, and we won't be nerfing them further as a result unless something changes significantly. I completely agree with this take. I'm actually surprised to see this here. Obviously, we'll deep dive the math on the boots. I can't believe that people wanted them to nerf the boots. The boots aren't good. I don't ever build them. I'll be straight up with you. I don't think it's ever good to build them. That's how bad they are. Okay, never build them. At the same time, we're trying to strike the right balance between nerfing things out of viability and allowing time for perception to catch up with reality. I think this is another really good take from Riot, is a lot of times Riot is actually so good at hearing community feedback that they cave 2 days into the season and decide that they're completely changing the system, or going to nerf things heavily or buff things heavily, and they overchange things because of the community feedback. And sometimes, like I said, sometimes the community's perception is spot on and Riot really trolled with an initial release. But on this one, I think that Riot did a good job of making them very, very small changes. And like I said, the reason why this video is, this is the most overrated thing that's been added to League, why I think it's so overrated, is because people's perception and reality on this one are just completely different, in different universes. So what they are going to do is they're going to try to change perception. So for now, we're skewing further towards perception because players generally think these things are extremely overpowered, a stance we disagree with, but can see why players would think that because we've increased the visibility on these objectives, and getting feats is correlated with winning. Regardless of whether it changes perception, I wanted to present what we're seeing and explain why we're making the decisions that we are. If you're a player who feels like we should FF if the opponent got First Blood and now has a 57% chance to win, we don't agree with or encourage that. Even if team wins Feats of Strength, there's still a fighting chance to win at that point, despite playing from the back foot. It would be inappropriate for games to still be 50 or 60% chance to win at the 15 to 20 minute mark of the game, or the game time would get too long anyways. This is also true. Like, by the time you get to 20 minutes into the game, one team is going to have a pretty high chance of winning anyways, because one team is going to have an advantage over the other team in most games at that point. This is another thing people don't understand about ranked. Just because matchmaking is fair doesn't mean that games are going to be even at 20 minutes into the game. That's not how League of Legends works. I think people think of fair matchmaking in a fair game as a game where it's 20 kills to 20 kills, and it's 2 dragons to 2 dragons at 20 minutes, and you just have this really balanced, close game. That's not what makes the game balanced. You can take two teams that are equally likely at winning versus each other. Take two professional teams that go to 5 games in a best of 5. When you look at the 5 games that they played in a best of 5 series, were they even in every single game? Or did one team decisively and clearly win each game? And then, maybe there were some close games as well, but a lot of games in League are decisive one way or the other, even if you have two equal teams playing versus each other. So you see that in professional play where you have two very close teams, two very competitive teams that are able to take each other to a 5-game series in 5 games. And yet you'll still have games where one team blew out the other team in one game and the other team blew out the other team in the other game. It's because League is a very snowbally game. I mean, even in games like baseball that's not snowbally, you'll still see in the World Series one team get a blowout in one game and the other team get a blowout in another game. Because at the end of the day, just because you're equally likely to win versus each other in 100 games doesn't mean that when you only play one match versus each other, one team isn't going to just get a significant advantage and win. So the way that League works and the matchmaking works is that you're often going to find yourself in situations where, okay, we have a very 50-50 balanced team playing versus each other because the matchmaking is solid, but then we match against each other and one team gets, 3 kills level 1 and now the game snowballs out of control and it's just over for one team, even though they were equally matched. Does that mean that the game wasn't balanced properly or like that the matchmaking wasn't fair? Absolutely not. You could get the same thing, but instead of, an absurd 3 kills at level 1, you could have a game where the game is perfectly balanced in terms of matchmaking, like totally fine matchmaking, but, one team happens to come out on top in 3 fights across all 3 lanes because statistically that, if those teams were to play each other 100 times, sometimes all 3 lanes are going to come out with a kill after the first couple of minutes. And all of a sudden the game is kind of snowballed out of control and the other team is going to have a hard chance of coming back and winning because now the other team has a 70% chance of winning. That's just how League works in general. So people have this perception that there should be a 50, like that if games are balanced properly and matchmaking is good, there should be a 50% chance that we win the game, even when we're like 10, 15, 20 minutes into the game. But if that were the case, games would last forever, and there's no way to ensure when you match teams together that one team isn't going to get ahead of the other team, because in a game like League, if you get even slightly ahead, it snowballs into a very, very big lead. On top of that, so not only would the game time be too long and that, not really, it's just counterintuitive to how League works as a game. But I would say on top of that, like, actually, I don't remember what I was going to say, but we're off on a tangent. Anyway, so, okay, for the future, even if the stats look good, some changes create too much friction and how it feels matters just as much as the numbers. We wanted the Feats system to create more reward satisfaction, focus, and tension around prioritizing early objectives. We've been starting to see players experience some of the dynamic and fun game states that we saw when playtesting, especially when it's a close game around the last feat. Currently, though, even if the actual game impact is reasonable, it's clear that First Blood is causing too much friction in the satisfaction and clarity of gaining it. As a result, we're going to change it in either 15.2 or 15.3. Candidly, we messed up here and it should have been changed pre-release, but we're going to own that mistake, learn from it, and do better next time. By the time we identified we wanted to change it, it was just not possible to change it on that timeline. Tomorrow we'll post the full patch preview and detail further changes we want to make. Actually, I mean, the patch preview is out, so we can see really quickly. It looks like they didn't change it on this patch, because we can see here in the system buffs, they're buffing the minor runes and Yuntal, and they're nerfing the Rose's XP and the Voracious Otacon, but they're adjusting LDR and Voracious Otacon, but they're not doing anything to, there's some here, but these are both Otacon. So it looks like they actually didn't change. They didn't get around to the change for First Blood because they didn't think it was a problem. And I kind of agree with them, to be honest. So I think that's good. Maybe we'll see. These are all the champion buffs. These are all the champion buffs. So there's nothing here. Oh, there is some stuff here, but it's more Otacon and Home Guard. So we'll jump into the boots and take a look at it. Let's pull up like gold value in League to help us kind of understand here what we're getting for the gold. So with all that being said, the important thing to keep in mind is to refocus us. what are we getting from Feats of Strength? So, okay, we think that it's really important to get First Blood and to get First Turret, but actually we don't get the gold anymore, and the value that we get is coming much later into the game because we're getting our boots at 20 or 25 minutes. On top of that, rather than that gold all being snowballed into one person, or funneled into one person, I should say, it's being kind of evenly distributed amongst all the boot upgrades on every member of the team. So now all of a sudden, instead of one player being 400 gold stronger by 14 minutes, you're seeing maybe, hopefully, 100 gold stronger on every player at 20 or 25 minutes. Now that in and of itself, even if the boots are worth it and giving you that same value as First Blood and First Turret gold were before, where you're getting the 750 gold value worth of the cost upgrade on the boots and an extra 100 gold per player in a reward to make up for the old First Blood gold and old First Turret gold, and the timing, you're probably still not going to see that. So, again, maybe I just do the math. Honestly, the reason why this has been confusing people, I guess, when I talk about it is just because I call it 500 instead of 400. So we might as well just do the math here. So 400 divided amongst 5 players is 80 gold per player. Okay, so what we're saying here is that because you used to get 400 gold if you got First Blood and First Turret gold, each player needs to get at least 80 gold in additional value to the 750 they pay for the boots. So you need to not just get 750 gold worth of value. Just to be equal with what First Blood and First Turret gold were before, you need to actually get 830 gold worth of value from your boots. Now again, but this is more theoretical, considering the fact that you got the First Blood gold and the First Turret gold at like 1 to 4 minutes and 9 to 14 minutes, and you don't get to upgrade your boots until 20 to 25 minutes or something like that in game, because you have to complete 2 legendary items first, I would say that on top of them being worth 830 gold, you probably need them to be worth a lot more than that, because the 100 gold bonus that you were getting maybe at an average of, considering most of the gold was coming later, maybe let's call it like at 8 minutes or so into the game, your team, if you got First Blood and First Turret gold, was getting about that 100 gold per player. But if that's at 8 minutes into the game, by the time we're getting the boots, it really needs to be worth like 200 gold or something. So the more theoretical approach is it really needs to be somewhere between 830 gold just to be as good as before. But if you think about the timing of when you're getting it, probably needs to be worth maybe even 1,000 gold or something like that. At least 930, I would say, in my opinion. But, we're going to stick with the 830 number because I think that that's a lower number. It gives it a fairer shake. And I think that this can be a difficult theoretical concept for people to grasp, the time value of gold. And I also think that there's not, we're estimating how much we think the time value of gold matters. There's not like an objective take on here's how much gold is worth at 1 minute versus 20 minutes. So it is what it is. Okay, so let's just jump into it. So let's look at what we get from upgrading here. And we'll just go boot by boot. I do want to start, just because I've already done it, I'm going to start with plated Steelcaps. And Mercury Treads are very, very similar. I just want to start with these because I'm already familiar with them. And if it turns out that I'm wrong on certain boots, because I haven't done the other boots yet, I've done Swiftness Boots and plated Steelcaps and Merc Treads. So if it turns out that I'm wrong on other boots, at least know where I'm coming from, that those 3 aren't as good as people say that they are. It's funny too, because people told me Swiftness Boots was one of the most broken ones. And maybe it is on certain champions that really benefit from having a lot of movement speed, because you can't really get that much movement speed from other items in the game. But it's not that good. So, okay, let's get into it. So, plated Steelcaps give you 25 armor and 45 movement speed, and Armored Advance gives you 40 armor and 50 movement speed. So first off, we're getting 5 extra movement speed. And it is important to note, because people did comment this, you do get a little bit of stats for free. You get, I think it's on everything, it's like +5. So it'll be like +5 armor, +5 attack speed, etc. But I think on Sorc Pen boots, it's like +4 magic pen. is the only one that's smaller. I actually thought that the +4 magic pen would be a bigger impact than the +5 on everything else. So you do get that for free on your tier 2 boots if you get Feats of Strength. But again, 5 armor is worth very little gold. I mean, 5 armor is worth what? Where's armor here? 100 gold. Oh, that's actually not too bad. So I mean, getting that for free is kind of nice. Huh. Well, that's kind of interesting, because that makes me think, okay, well, we were hoping to get like 100 gold per player for free as a bonus, right? To represent the what we were getting from before in First Blood and First Turret Gold. What's actually interesting is that if you just sit on your tier 2 boots, which is what I do, is I either am sitting on tier 1 boots or I'll get tier 2 boots, but I won't upgrade it. Sitting on your tier 2 boots is actually giving you, at least for plated steel caps, it's giving you that 100 gold worth of value for free from Feats of Strength. Now, there's still the time value of gold problem, so that does work in terms of what we were seeing before, in terms of giving you that value. But it doesn't work in terms of, okay, well, I'm getting that for free at... Well, no, even that's better, because there's no time limit on it. You would get it at the same time as you got First Blood and First Turret Gold. Although that gets a little bit complicated too, because you didn't get First Blood Gold and First Turret Gold at the same time. The First Blood Gold would be earlier, but because it's a smaller percentage of the gold pot, we're going to confuse a lot of people right here. Because it's a smaller percentage of the gold pot, it shifts the average time value down by less. We've just lost a lot of people, but trust me, it makes sense. So what's really interesting here, actually, is that you get 100 gold worth of value, at least on plated steel caps, from just not upgrading it. So that's actually good. So Feats of Strength is actually neutral if you don't upgrade your tier 2 boots. If you just get the free +5, of whatever stat on your boots. Looks like that's probably worth about 100 gold, and you're probably going to get about the same as you would have gotten from First Blood Gold and First Turret Gold if you just don't upgrade your boots, minus, of course, the time value problem. Now, here's where the problem comes in. This actually means that upgrading them is probably even worse than I thought before, because since you are getting that 5 armor for free, upgrading it means you're not really getting that 5 armor for free. So that means it's even worse. So we're going from 25 armor to 40. So that's plus 15 armor. But as I just said, it's plus 15 armor, but you're already getting 5 for free, because you're not actually going from plated steel caps. You're going from the plated steel caps with an additional 5 armor on it. So you're not really gaining 15 armor. You're gaining 10, and then in terms of movement speed, you gain 5 movement speed. So we're getting 10 armor, which we saw. 5 armor we just saw was worth 100 gold. So 10 armor is worth 200 gold, and then we get 5 movement speed. So we have 200 gold plus the movement speed. Movement speed is worth 12 per movement speed, and so we got 5. So we got 60. So here's the problem. We only got, compared to sitting on our upgraded plated steel caps with Feats of Strength plus 5 armor, we only got 10 armor, which was worth 200 gold, and 5 movement speed, which was worth 60 gold, for a total of 260 gold worth of value, when this upgrade costs us 750 gold. So now we're talking about the passive that we get from Armored Advance needs to be worth 490 gold. That is really bad. Like, if you look at the stats that you get for this 750 gold, these are some of the least gold efficient items in the game by far. Most regular items that you build, right, are about, like, let's say 80, 90, 100%, sometimes even above 100% gold efficient in terms of their stats. And then the passive or active that you get is a reward for completing the item that is a total bonus on top of the item, where the stats are mostly efficient and free anyways. And so for an item to be, we're talking about like 20% gold efficient or something like that, or 25% gold efficient, that is terrible. Like, that is by far one of the worst items in the game. Okay, now let's think about what we get from the passive on Armored Advance and whether the passive is worth 490 gold. So, when you take physical damage from a champion, it grants you a shield that absorbs 10 to 120 based on level, plus 4% of your maximum HP, physical damage for 4 seconds with a 15-second cooldown. So this is what I said before. Let's say that you have 2,000 HP and you're level 9. Okay, 2,000 HP, so you're getting 4% of that as a shield. So 4% of 2,000 HP is 80. You're also level 9, so you're getting like a 62 shield. So you're getting an 80 plus 62 shield, so that's 142 health shield. Let's say that you get this off twice in a fight. Once at the start of the fight, and then 15 seconds later, it's over a 15-second long fight, which is a little bit of a long fight, to be honest. But let's say, just to be generous to it, you get this twice. If you get this twice, your total shield amount would be 284. Now, the other problem with the shield is that you're not really going to ever utilize 100% of a shield. A lot of times the shield is going to be ignored and wear off, or even if you do take some damage, it's not going to eat through the whole shield. This shield in particular is a pretty good shield, though, in that it doesn't dissipate and it doesn't wear off and get smaller over time, and it lasts for 4 seconds as opposed to a shield that lasts for 1 second or 2 seconds like most shields. So this is pretty strong actually for a shield. Let's be generous to it and say that, which is completely unreasonable, that you actually utilize 100% of the shield both times. Okay, you're getting 284 HP. What is 284 HP worth? 284 HP is worth 2.67 times 284. It's worth 750 gold. So if you manage to get, if you're 2000 HP in level 9, and if you manage to utilize 100% of the shield twice in a fight, I suppose it could be worth the gold to buy the upgrade. However, in a more reasonable example where, let's say, you do get it twice, but only 50% of the shield is being used, you only get half of that value. And so since you only get half of that value, you're getting the equivalent of 379 gold worth of health, in that fight. But because you needed it to be like 500 gold worth, because we had 260 from the stats that we were getting or so, and it's 750 gold, so we need about 500 gold worth of value. I just don't see it. Like, I just don't think that you get the value from this until much later on into the game. Sure, maybe when you have 3000 HP, or you're playing Cho'Gath or something like that, or you're level 12 or 13 or 14 or something like that. But if you're like an average level with an average amount of HP and you're using an average amount of the shield, it's not even worth the gold cost of the item. Especially when we consider, like I said, that you're getting 5 of this armor for free anyways if you get Feats of Strength and you're just sitting on plated Steelcaps. Okay, so that's kind of the math behind plated Steelcaps, is that you really have to have, there's some break-even point when you're a certain level and a certain amount of HP. And probably the answer is, and utilizing a certain amount of the shield, probably the answer is that you need to be somewhere around like level 11 or 12 with 3000 plus HP. And so maybe if you had 4000 HP but you're level 9, that would work. Or if you're level 14 or 15 but you only have 2000 HP, maybe that could be worth it. The other thing that's important about this, on top of all of that, not only is that how much you need in order to make it worth it, but you also have to consider that you're not putting this 750 gold towards your next actual item. And because the other items, the real legendary items in the game, often have much better passives and benefits than things like this for the gold value and stats for the gold value, you're probably better putting 750 gold into an item that's going to give you 100% gold efficiency in terms of your stats, and then also going to give you a passive on top of that that's great. On top of that, when you think about itemization, you have to think about whether your items synergize or not. because items are stronger than like the sum of their parts, basically. So let's say that you're a crit champion, right? Infinity Edge, when you get it, is going to make your other crit items even stronger. So maybe they're 100% value or 110% value, but then when you get Infinity Edge, now your items are really giving you more like 120 or 130% value for what you paid for them. Same thing with some support items. Let's say that you're going like Knight's Vow, Locket, Redemption. The healing and shielding power that you get from Redemption is going to amplify the healing that you're getting from Knight's Vow, the shielding that you're getting from Locket, and the healing on its own active in Redemption. So when you get all three of those items, the value of those items, because of the synergy that they have together, is even stronger than what each item put together is giving you. Because obviously we build items that have good synergy with each other and make each other stronger in most cases. So because of that, unless you have some sort of synergy with having this shield, like maybe you're a support and you do have healing and shielding power for some reason, although again, as a tank support, you're not going to have a lot of healing and shielding power. And is it worth going it just because you have, that's a whole nother argument. Like, just because you have some level of synergy with it, how much value are you actually getting from the synergy is also really important. So that's another misconception people run into is, oh, well, I have healing and shielding power, so if all of my items give healing and shielding, that's great. Well, sometimes an item that doesn't give healing and shielding, like, I don't know, let's say a Zeke's or something, could still end up being better than one of these other items, even though it doesn't synergize with your other items, just because of it's just good on its own. Not that Zeke's is that good. I'm just throwing that out as an example. So same thing here. There's a lot of tank champions in top lane and stuff like that are not really going to have anything that really benefits from or synergizes super well with having a shield. They don't have any way to increase shields. Having this shield doesn't make their other items better. It just doesn't do a whole lot or synergize with their items. Whereas if you're playing a top laner and you get some item that makes all your other items stronger as the third item, building into that item can be a much better use of gold than this. Okay, so there's the example for plated Steelcaps or armored advance. Now we have the Merc Treads, which is very, very similar. In fact, it's pretty much the exact same thing. The only difference is that we're getting magic resist instead of armor, and the passive is giving us a magic damage shield instead of a physical damage shield. But again, it's the same thing. Oh, I made well, actually, I don't think it matters. I mean, there's some assumptions obviously built into this, like, for example, when I tried to give the value of the shield, just so this doesn't confuse people, when I tried to give the value of the shield, I compared it to health, when in reality, obviously, health is actually better because it affects both types of damage that you might take. But if we're assuming that you're using 50% or 100% of the shield, it is kind of working like health because we're assuming that you're taking enough of that type of damage that you would have needed that health against that one specific type, if that makes sense. So it's the exact same thing, really. We're just looking at the math behind magic resist instead of armor. So actually, we can see it's the exact same thing. So cloth armor, we're getting about 20 gold per armor in terms of our cost. Same thing for magic resist. We have 20 gold per magic resist. So since we're getting an extra 5 magic resist for free on Merc Treads if we win Feats, we're going to go from 20 to 25, but then we go from 25 to 30, so we're getting 5 magic resistance. Wait, that's interesting. Do we not gain as much magic resistance on this one? We go from 20 to 30, but here we go plus 15. Here we go plus 10. Oh, so it is worse. So it's actually even worse on Merc Treads. So, wow. Okay. So you actually don't even gain 200 gold worth of magic resist. You only gain 5 magic resist on Merc Treads for some reason. So you actually only gain 100 gold worth of magic resist, and you gain, what was it, like 60 gold worth of movement speed. So you end up gaining 160 gold worth of value. And so the passive needs to make up for about an extra 600 gold, worth of value for it to even be just even for you spending your gold on it. And again, if you don't have synergy with it, spending 600 gold or 750 gold on something that you actually synergize with and makes everything else that you have stronger, your champion or your items or something stronger, is going to be a lot better than something that's just worth its value on its own. So, and it's the same math for the shield here. Basically, if you're like level 9, you're getting 62 from the level. If you have 2000 HP, you're getting, what was it? 2000 HP times 4% is 80. So 80 plus 62 was 142 magic shield. So you're getting 142 magic shield. Even if you proc that twice in a team fight and utilize all of it, you're getting 284. But realistically, like I said, so maybe you do, I think a realistic scenario is you do get it off twice in a fight, but sometimes you won't even do that if the fight's less than 15 seconds. Especially if you're already ahead, it's not really doing a whole lot for you, but a lot of items are like that, because if you're really far ahead and you're winning feats of strength and stuff like that, are team fights really going to take more than 15 seconds in a situation where like you're really going to need that shield to do anything? I mean, I really don't know that that's going to do a whole lot. But anyways, let's say, I think a realistic scenario, like I said before, is that you do get this off twice in a fight, but that you only utilize half of the shield. So we're right back at the same spot, which is you get about 142 magic damage shield at the point where you're level 9, 2000 HP. And of course, 1,400, or not 1,402, 142 health shield is worth about 379 gold worth of health. But of course, the problem is that we needed it to be worth 600 gold worth of health because of the fact that it costs us 750 gold to get it. So unless we have, unless we're getting this off twice and using 100% of the shield every fight, both shields every fight, or we have, an absurd amount of HP, 4,000 HP or something like that, or we're much higher level, we're just not getting close to where we need to be getting to for this item to be good. Let's give an example, just, to help the item a little bit. Let's say that we're like much later level. Even at level 18, we're getting 120. So let's say that we're like 120, and we have like 3,000 HP instead of 2,000. So this is a much later game example, just to kind of see maybe where there's some break-even point here. So we get 120 HP is 4% of 3,000, and we get 120 from being level 18. So in that situation, we get 240 health shield. And again, assuming we get it off twice, but each time we get it off, we're only utilizing half of the shield, we're getting 240 HP, which times 2.66 is worth about 638 gold. So even at level 18, 3000 HP, it's barely worth the gold cost, because that's 638 gold worth of value, and we needed this to be like 590 or 600 gold worth of value on top of the stats that it was giving just to break even on the item. And again, unless this item synergizes with your champion or synergizes with your other items in some way, you're probably better off building something that's not just giving you 100% efficiency, but really giving you like 110% or 120% efficiency because of its synergy with your other items. So again, plated steel caps, and even worse actually, because you get 5 less magic resist for the cost in the Mercury Tread upgrade. Really not very good. Okay, let's do Swiftness Boots next, because I've done that one as well. Okay, and then we'll get on to the fun ones for the carry rolls that are probably most of the people watching or whatever. Swift March. Okay, so what do we get? So we have 60 movement speed, and then we go to 70 movement speed. So we're getting an extra 10 movement speed, but we also get plus 4% bonus total movement speed. And the way this is calculated, we read in the patch notes, is very important, that it's a little bit different than a normal 4% bonus movement speed because it calculates last at the end. And so it gives you more movement speed in total than some other ones would. So a lot of 4% movement speed, like on a winged moon plate, gives you 4% of your base movement speed. Or of, anyways, this is the one that's finally calculated. I actually think that winged moon plating would give you 4% of your swiftness boots as well. I don't think it's only your base movement speed, but I'm not 100% on that actually. But anyways, the point is that this one is calculated all at the end. So let's say that we have, okay, well, let's just look. So 10 movement speed times 12 is like 120 gold worth of value. Where are we? And then let's say that we end up with, like, we'll give a big number. We'll even say 450 movement speed instead of 400. I think you could look at like 400, 450. But let's say that with this, we have 450 movement speed, which is quite a lot. We're going to gain 4% of that as a total at the end of everything. So let's say that we have all this stuff that's giving us all this movement speed. Our base movement speed is maybe 350. We're getting 70 from the upgraded Swiftness Boots. So that would take us, all the way to like 430 or no, 420. And then maybe you have some other items that are giving you movement speed bonuses as well. Or some, maybe, obviously the champions that would use this the best are champions that have movement speed built into their kit, like a Hecarim E or a Sona E or something like that. And of course, Hecarim really likes these boots as well because it also gives him damage because of his passive. So obviously he has a lot of synergy with this. And if you can't get a lot of movement speed, like I said, from other items in the game, and this is just a nice upgrade, then that could be fine for very niche champions. It could be totally beneficial. So I'm not saying don't build it on like a Hecarim or something that really benefits from the thing. But on a regular champion that had like 350 movement speed, goes up to like 420, maybe they go up all the way to like 450 from other items or something like that. Now they're getting that 4% bonus. 4% on even 450 is only 18 extra movement speed. So we're getting 18 movement speed, and then we're getting 10 movement speed, which is 28 movement speed from the boots, and that's all we get. And that is only 28 times 12, which is 336 gold worth of value for 750 gold. Now, people have pointed out that the gold value on tier 1 boots is a little bit skewed as a stat here when we think about gold efficiency, because tier 1 boots are apparently extremely efficient. They give you a lot of value, and usually you do not get so much value in terms of movement speed items as you do from anything besides tier 1 boots. So normally, right, let's say after you have tier 1 boots, if you were thinking about other boots that you might get, they're not as good. So, okay, let's think about swiftness boots in general then. So swiftness boots are 1,000 gold and give you 60, but for only 300 gold, you get 25 of that. So we're gaining an extra 35 movement speed, and it cost us 700 gold. So let's just think about that instead. So if we gain 35 movement speed at 700 gold, how much gold is that per movement speed? It's 20 gold instead of 12 per movement speed. And I think that's fair because swiftness boots are obviously not as efficient as tier 1 boots, but they're, what other thing are you even going to compare it to if you want to try to get a comparison of the gold value? So let's say it's 20 gold per movement speed. Even at 20 gold per movement speed, you're still only getting, with 28 movement speed, and that's if you have a lot of other movement speed from other things that are getting you to 450, you're still only getting 560 gold worth of value in terms of movement speed in relation to swiftness boots for 750 gold. So again, swiftness boots I don't really think are worth the upgrade. So don't upgrade them. Just get your free 5 movement speed. when you get Feats of Strength and sit on the boots and work on your other items that synergize better with your champion. Unless you deem on Hecarim, or some very niche champion that, well, it's worth the 336 to 560 gold worth of value because I get an extra 200 or 300 gold worth of AD from the movement speed that I'm getting. Or especially when I turn on my E and I'm actually at like 500 or 600 movement speed, that's where the value is coming from. Another quick conversation about movement speed is that movement speed, in my opinion, is a little bit binary, meaning that either you are faster than somebody or you're not faster than somebody. That's a little bit of a simplification because movement speed can come into play in all sorts of different situations. Like, for example, being able to dodge a skill shot or not being able to dodge a skill shot. And obviously there are certain situations where you have to chase somebody down in a time constraint. Otherwise they're going to get to their team or flash over a wall or get to their turret. But I think in most situations, where movement speed matters the most is you're running somebody down and you're either faster than them or you aren't. And at the end of the day, if you have Swiftness Boots and your champion has reasonable average movement speed, you are going to be faster than somebody when you chase them down. As long as your champion has as much mobility in terms of dashes and stuff like that, you're probably just going to be able to catch the person. So I don't really know that if you already have Swiftness Boots, you need an extra 28 movement speed to help you dodge skill shots better or to chase somebody down better or anything like that, because you're already faster than the other person, because you're already so fast that you're going to be able to dodge skill shots. So I don't really think that the benefit of an extra 28 movement speed is there. I guess I would say that movement speed can be good, but it has diminishing returns when you're already faster than the other person and you're already so fast that it's easy for you to dodge skill shots. So if you're already at that point where you're already at 450 movement speed and you're already 50 movement speed faster than most every champion in the game, and you've got a movement ability, which is why you're going the boots, because you synergize with the movement. If you're already a super mobile champion that's got 50 more movement speed than everybody else, why do you even need an extra 28 movement speed as opposed to funneling 750 gold into a stat category like tankiness or like damage, where you can actually use that in combination with your movement speed rather than just being really fast? And I think people just like being really fast because it feels good, and they don't think about the fact that, like, hey, this isn't really doing a whole lot for me anyways. So anyways, that's the same thing with Swiftness Boots. Obviously, unless you have a ton of HP, Armored Advance and Chain Lance Crushers are not worth it. We're talking like, you got to have a lot. We were talking like 4,000 HP. You got to be getting the shield off twice in a fight and utilizing near 100% of the shield. Swiftness Boots, unless your champion's named Hecarim and really, really benefits from some other synergy with it, and even on Hecarim, you'd have to check if the AD that you're getting while you're, super fast with it is potentially worth the 200 or 300 gold. Unless you're Hecarim, I don't know that upgrading to Swift March is ever worth it when the gold value is, again, 336 for the movement speed that you're getting. If you have 450 movement speed already, it's even less because if you have 400, your 4% bonus movement speed isn't even as much, and then the gold value is even lower. But I think being generous, 336 gold, or if we're saying that tier 1 boots is just really good value and we don't want to compare it to that, comparing it to how much movement speed you get on Swiftness Boots in general for the cost, it's 560 gold worth of value if you had 450 movement speed. And if you're down at 400, it's even lower. And that's not coming anywhere near reaching the 750 gold that you paid for the item. And there's no other passive. That's it. It just gives you that movement speed. That's really all there is to it. So it's just not worth the gold. And the only champion I can think of that would make up for 200 or 300 gold worth of value on an item like this is Hecarim. And even Hecarim could go other items, like I said, that maybe he's already got so much movement speed that he'd be better off going some AD item that synergizes with his other item as the third item instead of spending 750 gold on this when he's already faster than other people anyways and already has enough movement speed to utilize. Okay, on to the next one. So what about Gunmetal Greaves? Okay, so I haven't taken a look at these ones yet. The next four I haven't taken a look at. So we have 25% attack speed and 45 movement speed. And then obviously, like the other ones, we're going to gain 5 movement speed, and we're going to gain 15% attack speed. But again, you get 5% of that 15 for free if you just sit on Berserker Greaves. So you're actually going up only 10% here, plus 5 movement speed. So what is 10% attack speed going to cost us? 25 times 10 would be 250. And then we remember from before that our, so 250, I think we remember from before that 5 movement speed is worth, what was it? 60. So these ones are doing better than before, because before we've even gotten into the passive, we are at 310 gold worth of value from the stat upgrade. But again, I'll say this point again. When you're building tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 boots, so now you've spent on getting this 1,850 gold. If you were to buy any other item on an 80 carry or any other champion that's like 2,000 or 3,000 gold, like a full legendary item, your gold efficiency on your stats is going to be somewhere like 80, 90, 100, maybe even 110%. The gold efficiency on the stats that this gives is like not good at all. Like even if we compare the whole thing, 40% attack speed is what? 40 times 25. And then, so that's 1,000 gold worth of value. And then 50 movement speed is going to be 50 times 12 is 600 gold worth of value. So we're getting 1,600 gold worth of value on an 1,850 gold item. So if we do the math on that, it's 86% gold efficient. And then the passive that it gives is not really as good as the passive or the active that you would expect on like a full legendary item, right? And so this is what I'm saying. If you had a legendary item, forget feats of strength, forget there being boots and them being cool because they're boots. If you had a legendary item that was like 86% gold efficiency and its active or passive was basic attacks on hit against champions grant you 10% bonus movement speed if you're ranged, decaying over 2 seconds. Would you ever build this item? No one would ever build this item. It's complete trash. Now you have to get some movement speed with your boots. Boots are very essential. They're very important. So you have to get some movement speed, which is why people build boots. And Berserker Greaves themselves are quite efficient. So sit on Berserker Greaves and get your 5% attack speed for free. But let's, okay, so let's get into Gunmetal Greaves. Gunmetal, Gummental, whatever it is. Okay, so we know that they're giving you 310 gold worth of value, and then we have to evaluate the passive. So every time we auto attack somebody, we're going to have 10% bonus movement speed if we're ranged, but it's also decaying, so it means it's going to be less than that. Let's be really, really generous. Really, really generous. Let's just try to figure out what the value would be if we were just getting 10% bonus movement speed all the time. Let's say we were a champion that had 400 movement speed with our boots, and we were 10% faster. That's an extra 40 movement speed, which is quite a lot, to be fair. So 40 movement speed times 12 would be worth 480 gold. So if we were keeping this up permanently, plus the 310 that they were worth before, it still wouldn't even be worth the gold value of the boots because... Oh, no. Okay, it would be worth the gold value of the boots plus 40. So the gold value of if you were to keep this movement speed up permanently as a ranged champion, like even when you're just walking around the map, because we're comparing it to movement speed here, 40 movement speed plus the stats that you get from buying Gunmetal Greaves would be 790 gold worth of value if you permanently just got a 10% increase to your bonus movement speed. So if this just read 10% bonus movement speed for ranged champions, it would barely be worth the gold. It would be worth the gold plus 40 gold reward. Need I remind you that we're not even trying to get to 750. We've just been thinking about 750. We need to get to like 800 and something, right? Like 860 or something, or 850, to make up for the fact that we lost the first blood gold and the first turret gold to get these boot upgrades. So we're supposed to be getting 850 gold worth of value on these boots. Just to get 750 gold worth of value, we'd have to have this up permanently, which you're never going to have. So this isn't really equivalent to a 10% bonus movement speed buff all the time, because you have to be hitting people in order for you to get it. So the vast majority of the time you're not getting it, but you are getting it at a crucial time during fights. It's also decaying over 2 seconds, so depending on if you're constantly attacking somebody, you probably do have the 10% bonus movement speed up. But if there's too long in between your auto attacks, or you find yourself in a fight and you're auto attacking somebody for a couple of seconds, but then you're not auto attacking for a couple of seconds, even during the middle of a fight, you're not getting 10% movement speed because it's decaying down to 9, 8, 7%, and then you're getting it back up again. So the value of this is just not there either. On to the next boots. Okay, Lucidity Boots. So with normal Lucidity Boots, we get 10 ability haste and 45 movement speed. As with all the other ones, we get 60 gold. What was it? 60 gold worth of value from the 5 movement speed. And we're going from 10 ability haste to 25, but we would get 5 ability haste for free if we complete Feats of Strength and we're just sitting on Ionian boots. So we're not really going from 10 to 25, we're going from 15 to 25, which is 10 ability haste times how much are we paying for ability haste? About 50 gold per ability haste. That is pretty nice because that's 500 gold worth of value right there in ability haste. And 500 plus 60 is going to be 560 gold value. So that's much better because now we only need 190 gold worth of value out of the passive in order to break even. Now, compared to the fact, again, that we're losing the first blood gold and the first turret gold, we probably want an extra 100 value per person on our team from our boots. So we probably need 850 gold worth of value, which means instead of 190, we need 290 from the passive, but we might actually get there on this one. This one might actually be good. Let's see. Okay, the passive. Healing, shielding, or buffing an ally, damaging abilities against champions, and using summoner spells grants you 10% if you're melee or 8% bonus movement speed if you're ranged for 4 seconds. This can be triggered from the same cast instance only once every 4 seconds. Okay, so let's do the same thing we did. This one might actually be pretty good because we got a lot of value on Berserker Greaves from the movement speed, although it's kind of hard to compare, which is why we're getting so much value from it. So let's say, again, we had 400 movement speed and we're ranged and we get 8%. That would be giving us 32 movement speed for 4 seconds, which is quite a lot. And that movement speed would be worth, if you had it permanently, and if you were comparing the efficient tier 1 boots, you would end up with, I did plus instead of multiply. I end up with 384 gold worth of value from the passive. But of course, I mean, that's pretty good. I'd say that that's kind of worth it. There are some differences between this and the Berserker Greaves one that are really important. Number one, the movement speed doesn't decay. Number two, it lasts for 4 seconds instead of 2. So that's really big. And let's see. You do have to actually damage someone with the spell, though. You can't just cast the spell. But I'd still say that it borderlines on worth it. It borderlines on worth it for sure. I wouldn't say that it's good, but it borderlines on worth it. The gold value, I would say, is worth it. Now, again, I think the thing that's unfair about this comparison when we try to figure out how much gold this is worth or about how valuable this item is, the problem is that movement speed that you get when you're hitting people with abilities is not the same as movement speed that you permanently have to move around the map. So it may be the case when we try to hone in on how much this temporary bonus movement speed is, we may say that this temporary in-combat bonus movement speed is only worth half as much as real movement speed that you permanently have, and therefore instead of being 384 gold worth of movement speed, it really comes out to hypothetically around 192 gold worth of movement speed, which is just barely enough to break even on the 750 gold cost. And if you're comparing really we want to be getting 850, remember, to make up for not getting the first blood gold and the first turret gold as a reward. And on top of that, we have the time value problem that I said before, which is you really want more than 850 gold because the 100 gold that your team was getting amongst each person before in first blood and first turret gold was coming earlier in the game, as opposed, it was coming, you'd get both of those things by like 14 minutes or 15 minutes at the latest, as opposed to getting these bonuses at like 20 or 25 minutes. So, you could make an argument that even Crimson Lucidity boots or whatever are not that good, but I would definitely say for the cost, they're the best boots that I've seen here, and they're definitely arguably worth the cost for sure. Okay. Spellslinger's shoes. These are the Sorc boots. So we get 12 magic pen and 45 movement speed. And then we go from 12 to 18. What's really confusing though, and I want to be careful about this, is I'm pretty sure you only get 4 magic pen from the free upgrade. But I don't remember 100%, but I want to say you get 4 from the free upgrade. So you would go to 12 to 16. So it looks like you're getting 2 magic pen for buying the thing. And then you're also getting 8% magic pen. And then we're also getting the 5 movement speed. Oh, wow. And then there's no passive at all. It's just the passive is the 8% magic pen. So when we go to this, the other thing that we're going to have a hard time doing is valuing armor pen. Or not armor pen, magic pen, I mean. So, it looks like they do try to estimate here. So 13% magic pen, they're saying is worth about 46.15. And the magic pen on Sorc boots is about 46.67. So we're saying that percent magic pen is worth about 46 gold per percent. So 46 times 8. This one is a little bit of a pseudoscience, right? It's hard to get an exact count on how this works. But basically with Blighting Jewel, you just figure out the gold value of the AP, you subtract that. The reason why it's complicated is because when you have a component item that's 1100 gold, it should reward you for more than just the AP and the magic pen. You should get a little bit extra because it's a more expensive item. So the more expensive the item is, the more efficient it is because you put in a lot of gold into it. And so, it should be, in theory, a little bit less, it should be a little bit more expensive than this actually. But even using this number at 46 per percent on 8%, we get 368 gold worth of value. And then we had what? We had the 5 movement speed, which is another 60 gold worth of value. So that brings us to 428. And then we had 2 flat magic penetration. And with flat magic penetration, it's also saying it's worth around 46. So 46 times 2 would give us another 92. But that's pretty bad because in total we're only getting to 520 gold worth of value as a rough estimate. And we needed to get to 750 gold worth of value for it to justify us purchasing the item. We're also, again, not necessarily getting, although there is pretty good synergy with this and other AP items, of course, since it's Magic Pen, but we're not necessarily getting the kind of amplifying, think of a Rabadons or something like that. We're not getting the kind of amplified, more than 100% efficiency that we would get from building into an item that synergizes really well with our other 2 items or 3 items. We're also not getting the extra 100 gold that we'd want per player to make up for the first blood and the first turret gold. And we're certainly not getting an extra 200 gold worth of value, because we have to consider that we're not getting this stats until, 20, 25 minutes into the game, whereas the first blood and first turret has been saying over and over again, you were getting much earlier into the game. Finally, we have Synchronized Souls. And let's see. So Symbiotic Souls give you 35 movement speed. And then, of course, once you do the quest with 150,000 units of distance, you get... What does it say? 45 bonus movement speed while out of combat. Or that's Synchronized Souls. How come when I'm reading Symbiotic Souls, it's not saying how much you get? Oh, I'm trolling. Wait. Oh, we need to be looking at Forever Forward. That's where I was missing one. Okay. So you're getting the 45 bonus movement speed out of combat, the Empowered Recall on this. Hold on. So where are we going? We're getting 10 movement speed here, and we're also gaining this passive of 10% total movement speed bonus. Wait. Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. They're adding 10% total movement speed on top of what you were getting before from Synchronized Souls, which was 45 bonus movement speed while out of combat. So 10 movement speed, again, probably worth about 120 gold. And wow, this is really bad. And then 10% total movement speed. Again, let's say that we're really generous and you have 450 movement speed, because this one's really going to need some generosity. 10% would be 45 movement speed. So let's say you got 45 movement speed from the passive. Now, this is only while you're out of combat, so it's not really worth the same as movement speed in general. And you get 10 movement speed. Oh, you don't even get 10 movement speed. You only get 5, because you get 5 movement speed for free, I assume, on Synchronized Souls as well. So we're getting 5 movement speed if we buy the upgrade, and then we're getting 10% total movement speed out of combat. So if we have 450 movement speed, our 10 movement speed is equivalent to 45, and then we got 5 from the boot purchase. So 50 times 12, we only get to 600 gold worth of value, and that's being generous and considering the 10% total movement speed out of combat as just general movement speed in combat, which is not the case. So again, you could really say that 45 movement speed is even half the value that you're getting. And if you were to half the value because it's only out of combat, and I would even argue that in combat is so much more valuable than out of combat. I don't really think that there are two sides to a coin, and that one is 50% of the value and one is 50%. I think that the in combat movement speed is probably worth more like 60 or 70% of the value that you get from movement speed. And then, out of combat is important for some things, but can only be a small chunk of that. The other thing is, of course, for roaming and things like that, you're not going to need movement speed to roam at 25 minutes into the game. The roaming that's occurring in between your lanes and stuff like that on recalls is happening so much earlier in the game before you get boots like this. So again, if you devalue, so 600 gold if we're being really generous, if you had 450 movement speed, if we're just counting the 10% bonus movement speed out of combat as regular movement speed. If you only consider it worth half as much, then we're only doing 45 times 6 plus the 60. So then it's only 330 gold worth of value, and you're paying 750 gold for it. You want to get 850 gold for it because you lost the first blood gold and you lost the first turret gold, and have this as a reward instead. So again, as you can see, I think just across the board, the boots don't have that much value. When you look at the gold that they're giving for the cost, like the stats that they're giving for the cost, I just don't think it's that good. They're just really across the board quite bad. I mean, I'm seeing somewhere between like maybe getting 80% of the way to the cost to in some cases worse. I mean, really, I would argue that this boot, I would be willing to pay for Forever Forward. I would be willing to pay maybe 350. I call it 350. Maybe 400 gold tops is what I would be willing to pay for Forever Forward. So the problem is when it's 750 gold and it's supposed to be a reward, it's actually reducing snowballing because, as I said, you're actually wasting money on these boot upgrades when you're ahead and winning instead of building other items that are better and have better synergy and actually give you better value for your gold. So you're actually getting baited into playing super aggressively, changing your champion pool, your summoner spells, your runes, and your play style to play for boots that aren't even worth it. So if anything, I think most of the time, on average, your team getting feats of strength and then everyone choosing to buy these boots is a net negative for your team as opposed to building other items. So feats of strength is actually reducing your team's chance of winning by getting it. But of course, that's complicated. You want to get the things that lead up to feats of strength. So it's not that you want to give the other team feats of strength so that they build the bad boots, but you don't want your team to build it either. So it's in a really weird spot because of that. To go back to what they said here, and I made this argument, but I want to bring it up again. I think that if you have a factor that is giving you a 71% win rate when you get first turret gold, and you have another positive factor that on its own is giving you a 57% win rate, I think that these two things together probably add up to somewhere like 74, 75%, maybe even higher. I don't know, because it's, you adding these two things together is hard, right? But I just want you to look at these three numbers and think about it again. If you get one factor that's increasing your chances of winning by 70%, or I shouldn't say that result, because it's not increasing your chances of winning by 70%. So I shouldn't say it like that. But if you have one factor that means you're 71% likely to win the game, and on top of that, you also get another factor that says you have a 57% chance to win the game, do you think that the combination of the two only gives you a 74% chance to win the game? Or do you think that achieving both of these factors is going to give you much higher than a 74% win rate? I think that achieving both of those factors be really nice if they put this stat out. What is the percentage chance that a team wins? Well, I guess it doesn't matter because feats of strength is in the game now. So if you got both of those, you'd always be getting feats of strength. Not the same as the feats of strength win rate, but the feats of strength would skew it, because if you do get both of those things, you would. So what we need, although they'll not put this out, but what you need to see is on 1424, before feats of strength was in the game, because these win rates on first turret and first blood were about the same. What is the win rate on 1424 when you win first blood and first turret? I bet your win rate is more than 74.1%, which means that feats of strength is actually negatively impacting your win rate, which makes sense because you're wasting gold on boot upgrades that are actually objectively terrible. So one final point. I know that probably not many people have made it an hour and a half into the video and actually seen how bad all the boots are. But let me ask you this. How bad are you guys at League of Legends? No offense. Now, my prestigious viewers, especially the ones making it to an hour and a half, probably agreed with me, hopefully, when I first gave my initial impression that this sounds terrible, that these boots sound awful. How bad are people at League of Legends that the entire community right now is raging at Riot and telling them that the feats of strength thing and these boots are OP when they are literally the worst items in the game by far? I don't think you could build almost any other item in the game that would have a more negative impact on your win rate than any of these boots right here, even the best one, even the Lucidity boots, which I think is barely worth the gold. I think it's probably pretty even for the gold cost, but you'd be better off building some items that have better synergy with your champion and your other items. So how bad is everybody that we're sitting here trolling Riot, saying that this is OP, 2 days into the season, people are complaining already. They barely played it. I just got a rant about this one. I saw a video from, I almost wanted to just pull up the video and watch it, but it's so annoying. I don't want to watch it again. From the Score Esports, okay, about 1 day into the season, you have some player, I don't know what rank he is, but he's certainly not GM or Challenger. You have some guy on there who's probably some gold player. 1 day into the season, the guy's probably played 5 matches, complaining about how OP Feats of Strength is, and he has no clue. 0 clue. He's never looked at the items. He has no idea what they are, what they do. He has no idea what the value is for what you're getting. And you have people, even high elo players. I saw Nemesis saying, now he was mostly focused on Otacon, and again, people are right about Otacon. That's something we'll have to dive into in another video. To be honest, one of the reasons why I don't have much of an opinion on Otacon is because I haven't even seen the GA one in any of my 24 solo queue games so far this season. I haven't seen him once, the GA one. Now, I did see it. I got it on a Smurf account once, but I have had one game where I utilized either team utilized the GA thing from the passive Otacon one. But just to put it into perspective, stop being bad at the game. Look into the stuff that you're saying. The people's perception and reality are so far off. Like, people are just so stupid. Look at the items, figure out whether they're worth it to buy or not. Don't just blindly waste 750 gold every game on a boot that you think is good because it's a tier 3 boot and we like boots and movement speed is fun. Like, actually think with your brain about what the item gives you. It takes 5 minutes to go through each boot and to think about the gold efficiency and to realize, oh, this kind of sucks. And to think about all the, you don't even have to think about all the time value of gold and all these other complicated factors. They just suck, and they've always sucked, and people suck at the game, and so they think that the sucky boots are good when they suck, and that's all I have to say about it. With that being said, good luck in solo queue. Have a wonderful day. It looks like Riot's keeping everything as far as Feats of Strength is concerned the same for the next patch, which I really agree with them taking a strong stance of, look, the community's wrong about this one. We'll see how perception pans out, but we actually think the boots suck. I agree. Buff Feats of Strength. They need to buff the boots. I want to see a 50% increase to the power level of Forever Forward, this one. This is bad. I want to see a 50% buff to this item. It needs double the strength right now. It needs double the strength. That's how bad it is, okay? So with that being said, good luck in solo queue. Don't play for Feats of Strength. Like, play for first turret if you want to, like, if you need to get the first turret. Play for dragons. Play for grubs because of what grubs and dragon and Rift Herald and Otacon give. Do not play for things just because of Feats of Strength. Okay? Good luck in solo queue. Have a wonderful day. We'll deep dive Otacon later.